welcome to another episode on the Tetragrammaton channel. Nice of you to tune in. Today we have a very interesting topic. We're going to be exploring the realms of science, mathematics, theoretical physics. And not only that, we're taking it a step further because we're going totally cutting edge, the sort of new kid, the sort of underground hipster track that's before it hits the mainstream. It's really cool though. You know, it's one of those things that you see and it's like, oh, this is gonna be big. Just give it some time until it gets out there. So, and the reason why I brought this up is because there's this really cool thing about it. And I think that it's going to be kind of like the proof is in the pudding type of thing, that truly something like God's fingerprint is integrated in the key balance of the theory, so to speak. One of the key ingredients to the theory to make the mechanisms work out is actually the golden ratio. If you guys aren't familiar with that, check out the links in the bottom. There's a whole sequence of links that tie into this entire discussion, and they're really, really interesting. But this one is sort of like for the people out there that like technical stuff. And yeah, you know, the kind of people that like to watch Cosmos on a weekly basis, you know, the Carl Sagan inspired TV show that came out a few years ago about space and yada yada and yada yada. So this is kind of like for you guys. Again, check out the links in the description because they're really cool videos. Hopefully I kind of have a good selection of some a little bit shorter and some the longer ones that get into the really kind of like the nitty-gritty for the layperson, of course. You know, we're not trying to get a postdoctorate in high energy particle physics, right? Anyhow, alright, so I'm just gonna kind of assume that most people know. At this stage, I'm just gonna jump right into it, okay? So there's this thing, you know, string theory, and that was trying to be kind of like the unifying sort of bridge between general relativity that, you know, Einstein threw out there, and quantum physics. And it's generated a lot of useful things, of course. You know, a lot of things have been done in the realm of string theory, and new things and new understandings, new models, new mathematical models that predicted the behavior of things were created. But the more they sort of work into the realm of string theory, they kind of realize that it's not this beautiful, elegant solution Zen structure. It's got a lot of like, it's like tables in an engineering book, right? Like a thermodynamics tables for engineers. It's just more and more standalone things that have to be taken as conditions of certain. Given a certain situation, you have to use these, and given a different situation, you have to use these, and there is definitely no link between them, but each and every one standalone is useful. And then, so now, I don't know quite when this came out, but I heard about it a few years ago, and I was pretty intrigued at that time because I've been around physicists as a student when I was back in college, and I used to hang around them a lot, and I've always liked that stuff. And you know me, I'm kind of a nerd, so anyways, this new idea came up, and it's called, it goes by kind of like many names. I've heard them call it quantum gravity theory to E8 quasi-crystal theory, and some people are like, oh, it's emergence theory. But I'm going to stick with quantum gravity and E8 quasi-crystal because they sound so much cooler. Now, basically, the quasi-crystal is basically like this whole construct that represents the a shape-like object that has all these nodes, points, right, in between these almost like web structures. Now every one of those nodes is basically a kind of like a constant, right? Like it's the speed of light constant or the gravitational constant. It's all these things that are sort of like preset, or like the charge of an electron, right? All these things, and they're way more than I know. I'm an engineer, and even within the world of engineering, I'm simply a dirt and concrete engineer. I'm not even into electrical. So it's kind of like a nurse talking about brain surgery. However, all these nodes, right? Like there's all these constants that we kind of know, and experimentally we know what the value of those constants are given certain conditions. And of course we've even noticed that speed of light constant is not a constant, actually changes, which is blowing the minds of all these sages of physics. But we'll get to that because the quasi-crystal can better explain why that's happening. Now, you have all these nodes that are intersecting between the little points, and some of the nodes you know the value of, and then you realize, oh, there's all these other nodes, and we don't even know what the value of them are. And there's hints that the nodes have to be there because the quasi-crystal, the structure, is elegantly tied together. Like, it doesn't bulge out on one of the other sides, right? And then create nodes in space that would have weird, bizarre values that don't seem to make sense, right? Together, the construct fits a beautiful form. And that's, of course, based on, right now, a hypothesis that is the way that the quasi-crystal balances itself in. But that also means that there is a way to sort of, through speculation, through the arrangement of the quasi-crystal, you can now speculate on where you have new constants that you might not even know existed, and what the values could be, instead of just anything in the world, wherever that node might lie in space. Now here's the thing that sort of gets all these old school physicists a little bit cringy when they hear about the quasi-crystal, and that's the fact that in order to establish a shape for the quasi-crystal that you can sort of throw out as a first hypothesis, they say, why is the quasi-crystal shaped like that instead of some other shape? And they said, well, it's because we're using the golden ratio to sort of establish the initial footprint, the initial silhouette of the quasi-crystal. And they said, the golden ratio, isn't that like crazy numerology and all that woo-woo science and sort of the poetry of madness? And it's like, well, maybe it is, but it certainly shows up a lot in nature, and the quasi-crystal is sort of like the core fingerprint of nature, right? It's like the guitar string that harmonically resonates to then emerge out the universe as we perceive it.